What is the most unethical thing you've been asked to do at work? A woman asked me to slip her mother extra morphine, basically to euthanize her. She offered me money to do it. Her mom was nowhere near needing hospice care, yet her daughter was withholding water and food. I called the cops on this lady so fast. We were loading a truck late one night when one of us notices a girl lying in a nearby parking lot, having some kind of seizure. It was already late. The parking lot was empty, and there was nobody else around, other than us, to go render some assistance. So she might have laid there for hours, if none of us had offered to help. Nevertheless, our boss told us to mind our own business, and finish loading the truck. I said to myself, I'm not going to just ignore somebody who could be dying. So I started towards the parking lot, but my boss began insisting that I was on his time, and that I would do what he told me to. I told him to take me off his time, and continued over to the girl in the parking lot. It was a long time ago, and now that I remember, my boss did call 911 when we saw her lying there, so he wasn't exactly just going to leave her there, he just didn't want any of us going over and getting involved. The guys who sat next to me told me about the crap the bankers ask in regards to their mortgages. The company bought and sold home mortgage loans. Sometimes the computer system wouldn't like a particular loan. Sometimes it's because of incomplete info, or because a signature date is after some reg or rule allows, so those loan processors or whoever would just ask these guys to change a signature date to get the loan processed. These people have a blatant disregard for rules. Even all the unethical crap in the news didn't faze these people. It's not my problem, is their attitude. Monitor the cameras out front and never unlock the door for cops. I worked in a dispensary a few years back when they still got raided frequently. It was a weird job. This is done so much now, and it really bothers me. Every retail store makes you sell their store cards. You can't just be a cashier anymore. The problem with this? People don't understand how credit cards work, or they're forgetful, or both. These stores are banking on this because that's where the money really is, in collections. It's shady and I refuse to work for any retailer who does this. TLDR. I had to sell alcohol to drunk man with a bad id. I quit. I was working a part-time job at a local gas station chain a few months back to make some extra cash. Near the end of my shift on my third day, I had a very drunk man come up to the counter to buy 2 large cases of beer. I asked him for his id and it was shredded, taped back together, and outdated. He kept insisting he was a regular and it would be fine. I asked my trainer manager for help and she actually made me sell the alcohol to this guy. I tried to protest but she told me it would cost me my job if I didn't. I admit I made the sale, but I immediately went on break and called the GM and the person above them and they refused to do anything. So I finished the remaining hour and quit. It's really weird that the manager didn't care because the store's liquor license is on the line for crap like that, and if they lose that it's straight up tee up. As a doctor in the ICU, I have to continue treating a patient who clearly is dying and has no chance of survival because family members who know nothing about medicine get to make the decision and they don't want the person to die. So a person with no chance of survival is subjected to all sorts of invasive procedures, medications, etc. that will end up having no effect, in addition to CPR, which is quite a violent procedure and will not save them but will break their ribs, etc. I view this futile medical treatment as unethical. If someone cannot survive, why am I pretending to try to save them by going through these motions when nothing is going to help? I work in rental cars. When we get low on vehicles, sometimes we end up giving free upgrades to fill the reservation, but our managers still want us to sell upgrades. So during those times, we'll offer a vehicle you'll already get upgraded to for free at a price we basically make up based on how likely you are to say yes. That's right, I tell you it's $10 more per day, and if you say no, you get it for free. The company likes money, so they intentionally allow too many reservations to come through. Sometimes, everybody shows up, so if you're on the last flight, your 2 months in advance reservation might not mean crap. That's when I'm asked to change the definition of reservation. Walking up without a reservation, I make the price based on what I believe current supply and demand to be. Ask for a specific car that I happen to have, That'll cost more. I feel like a crappy person every day, but it is one of the best paying jobs in my area for those without a degree. I already have a second job. I work on the weekends, so every dang day is me trying not to scream back at customers that this is not who I want to be. I drink and smoke more and more every day, which doesn't help the finances either. But it's the only way I can cope with who I am during the day. Sorry for the heavy crap. I just get a lot of flack when people find out what I do for a living, so I feel the need to tell people how I hate being a rental agent more than anybody in the world hates rental agents. TLDR. You already knew the industry is screwed up. These are the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't at work, but I was told by the institute I was studying at not to tell the customs people I was going to Japan for school, and that I should instead say I was going for tourism. I think it was pretty obvious to them, since I suck at lying when nervous. I was told to dump over 1,000 gallons of water contaminated with oil and other chemicals into the ground. Pretty sure that was illegal and someone is about to have their water supply contaminated. Fracking industry for those who are wondering. I'm sure there have been worse things, but I recently left my job as a barista. There were a handful of times when we dealt with an offensive customer, and I was asked by another barista to decaf their drink. I never did. The thought offended me even more, because I take a lot of pride from my work ethic. Besides, I didn't want to lower myself to how a customer treats us, and it's not like I knew what they had been going through either. I like you. You're a good egg. When receiving my check, I was told not to disclose how much I had earned. I don't remember if I had to sign anything legally binding, but if you were to take the 84 hours week over 7 weeks and multiply that by minimum wage, $8 an hour, I made about a third of that before taxes. Being a stupid 18-year-old, I just chalked that up to the company supplying room and board. But seeing as it was a Boy Scout summer camp, the room was a leather tent on a raised platform with no electricity, and the food was passable. When I was a student in uni, I was really desperate for a job and some quick cash one summer. I ended up answering an ad on Kijiji, like Gumtree but for Canada, for a job at a charity. When I showed up for the interview, it was in a mall parking lot. I talked to the owner and his wife for like 10 minutes and then they offered me a receptionist job for their charity and drove me to the warehouse where they worked out of. I should mention that they wouldn't let me drive myself to the warehouse. They made me leave my car in the mall parking lot and drove me in their car. The charity was a candy bar selling scheme where workers would be given candy bars and some documentation and would go out and try to sell the bars at a huge markup, like $3 for a Mars bar. Ostensibly it's all meant to be for the very good cause of helping mentally disabled people get jobs, except that it definitely wasn't. It only took me a few days working as the receptionist at that place to realize the whole thing was a big scam. All their workers were undocumented migrants from the Caribbean and Jamaica, and the couple paid everyone in cash. At the end of the day, under the table, their documentation, which was meant to be proof that they were a charity, was non-existent. They had their workers showing scans of a very obviously fake letter from the mayor, like WTF. I started working there on a Tuesday, and by the next week I never returned, and they never called me. I should have reported them, but I was young and worried because I had signed a bunch of documents for them. I told my mum and she told me just to not get involved, so I listened to her. I forget their name now, but this happened in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. So for anyone who lives around there, if a charity worker comes to your door selling really expensive candy bars, don't buy them, it's a scam. TLDR. I accidentally worked for a fraudulent charity for 4 days. I figured out it was a scam pretty quickly. It was a really sketchy situation. To make a payment to a contractor without the proper paperwork. The person that asked me to do this was later found guilty of fraud and lost his engineer's license. FUMR. You corrupt piece of crap. I used to work in the electronic cigarette vaping industry. My boss was one of the head figures for the Canadian E-Cigarette Trade Association, one of the main trade organizations and regulatory groups here, and actively let products make it to our shop shelves that did not pass health regulations. I had some health complications as a result of using products that had not passed safety examinations. Premium Labs and VIP juice for anyone who cares. and was asked on multiple occasions to lie to customers about the quality of the products and was reprimanded for not recommending them. I was actually eventually fired for speaking out about my experiences and health problems associated with vaping on Reddit. Sell crappy shoes to someone who had just had ankle surgery. I didn't do it. I'm not putting someone's health at risk for some crappy commission. About a month ago we had a break-in in our offices. It happened on a weekend and none of us knew until we got to work on Monday morning. The first thing the bosses ask me and our IT guy to do is erase the security tapes. Yes, our company was broken into and the owners asked us to delete the security footage. Why, you ask? Well, because, and this was all discovered through independent employee investigations into our offices as to what could be missing, have been tampered with, etc. We discovered that one of our owner's sons, who was fired back in July, broke into the building, snuck a girl in here to frick, did a bunch of coke. He left a scale covered in powder and his prints, changed a bunch of passwords to company accounts and then left, all of which was caught on tape. Now I don't know what the owners were thinking or why our IT guy so willingly went along with this plan, but I'm not an idiot and I knew that deleting them was tampering with evidence and technically a felony. So when the cops came in looking for the tapes, I had to play dumb like I have no clue how magically the security tapes now only have a history that starts at 2 days after the break-in. I'm not exactly sure what he said, but as my boss walked the cop out the door, I watched as he put his arm around that cop's shoulder, guided him back to his cruiser and shut the door. He hasn't been back since. I was the receptionist at a salon in high school in a small Texas town and I was asked to send away a black man who came in with his military uniform on. He had just gotten home from deployment and wanted to look nice before he surprised his wife. My boss asked me to turn him away because she didn't cut black people hair. I refused to do so and quit soon after. I realized I didn't want to work for a xenophobic jerk. Family medicine doctor on my first outpatient rotation in medical school wanted me to write scripts and sign for him while he slept through a 2-hour lunch. He couldn't get why I wouldn't. It's not hard. Just scribble. Make it look like a mountain. You know those recycle bins at supermarkets? The glass ones get rather dangerous because you are transporting usually 20-30 pounds of sharp broken glass to the back of a truck to go to a plant. My former bosses expected me to do that by myself in pouring rain snow where I have to lift the container practically over my head to dump in this bigger container. All for minimum wage. Frick that. That doesn't sound unethical, just sounds like a crappy and dangerous job. Frick that anyway. Have an upvote. The work functions of my section, where we were all salaried, was moved to our call center in the next state over where the workers were all hourly and had less benefits. Our management found jobs for us still within the company, and my team was still on good terms with the lower tier workers on the call center team. Management put me into business analysis, and had a project for me to document all of our processes, in order to increase efficiency. I worked on this for several months, until it was made clear in a meeting that increasing efficiency meant reducing headcount. They had wanted me to find a way for them to take the 3-person hourly wage team that had taken over for my 4-person team and make it a 2-person hourly wage team for efficiency, and then I left. I worked as a night auditor for a year and a half. It was a very crazy, surreal experience, full of unethical everything. The hotel I worked at was managed by a larger chain, but it was independently managed by a general manager. I ain't gonna name them cause I'm paranoid about it biting me back in the butt. Corporate HQ would routinely send inspectors down to our hotel to check the quality of the rooms, the quality of service, and everything like that. They'd rate how clean the room was, rate how well stocked it was, shampoos, soaps, coffee, towels, etc, how operational the facilities were, how well maintained it was, etc, etc. My hotel had multiple rooms with multiple problems that the management couldn't be asked to do anything about. Some rooms had lights that wouldn't turn on. Some rooms had broken air conditioners. Some rooms had roaches and bed bugs in them. Some rooms just didn't have electricity at all. The hotel I worked at had around 140 rooms, and I guessed about 15 or so of them were broken, horrible messes. So what did management decide the best course of action would be? Well, they would call in the whole staff, house cleaning, desk clerks, everyone on call, and then they would assign us to these rooms. We would pose as guests, hanging up a do not disturb sign when corporate began their inspection. Because when corporate began their inspection, the only caveat that prevented them from entering a room is if there was a guest currently occupying it with a do not disturb sign. If the corporate inspector came across such a room, they would not be allowed to open it for inspection, and thus it was just written off as a NA, meaning the quality of said room wouldn't have any kind of factor on the overall assessment of the inspection. I freaking hated everything about it. That job was the worst. I quit the second something better came along. The company I work for has a strict time reporting policy, which my boss browbeats me to comply with. He, however, does not. Every month, I have to submit our time allocations to the CFO, and even though he would have been out several days over the previous month, he will only report 1/2 day of vacation time. Shady bastard. Lie to the Canadian border agents. I worked for Ford and was part of a team going to help an assembly plant with a product launch. To be there for 2 weeks, the team was told to tell the border agents that we were going for a conference rather than to work, because working required a permit. However, I missed that meeting and simply told the truth. Got turned around at the border, spent 2 days getting the permit, had to drive rather than take the train, spun out in a snowstorm, wrecked my car, felt like blowing the whistle, didn't. I no longer work for Ford, and that was a big part of it. This is why we need a wall on the border, to stop you dang Americans from coming up and taking our jobs. Not my personal job, but my friends who's working as a paramedic and was at the Paris attacks said to me that the hardest thing he ever had to do was to apply the war rescue plan. Equals when there are too many wounded people, they had to put the most severely injured people aside to favor the ones less injured because they had more chance to survive. It was really hard for him to put dying people on hold, who may have survived or have less sequelae if they would have been taken care of sooner. Not tell the chef that we all knew his girl was cheating on him from the very beginning because it was the happiest and thus nicest and easiest to be around he's been in years. Hug your local chef. Folks, have you bought a shot for a line cook today? No? Go do it, and tip your servers. Find out the names of other people interviewing for a job and offer them an interview for a made up better job to distract them from accepting that job if offered, so that the candidate from the agency I worked for would get the job. By default, I guess. I worked at Wells Fargo, so you're pretty much everything. Also everything you read about them is true. It was really that bad there. I totally missed my shift that day, but earlier this year, a gentleman went into the Target I worked at and killed himself. Got a knife from the kitchenware aisle and just stabbed himself. My store manager decided to keep the store open and let people shop while the body was still there. When the police shut it down, she forced my co-workers to stay in the store and continue to work with the dead body while the professionals investigated the scene. I got texts from my friend crying over what was happening because she had made it to her shift that day and they wouldn't let her leave. I'm kind of relieved I missed that day. They needed to bring a therapist the following week so people could talk about it. I thought it was completely selfish and irresponsible of my store manager to keep the store open and force my co-workers to keep working with a dead body just aisles from them. I was told not to report workers' comp injuries at work so they wouldn't go on file. I was also told to fire someone who had no prior write-ups for being gay. Needless to say, I am no longer there. I'm an insurance salesman working solely on commission, and believe it or not, I've not been asked to do anything unethical. Driving around a toddler without a car seat, which is kind of surprising since I work in the music business and sketchy things go on, but I found having a toddler and 2 other kids who probably should have been in car seats in the back of my van the worst situation. They were the artist's kids, and I later told my boss either give me money to buy a car seat for him, or I am not driving them back, both illegal and unethical. I was told never to rent pay by the week apartments to black males. I quit quick enough that it was never an issue and reported it. Don't know if anything came of it. In the mental health home I worked at, clients have a set number of hours per month to spend in the community. The boss has to be very strict about making sure we take them out because we could be investigated for neglect if there's too many months in a row that their hours aren't finished. Because of slacking idiots, the community hours never run out. There was also a certain client who had anxiety around crowds and almost never liked to go out. Eventually I had this conversation with my boss. Take so and so out in the community. Me. I already asked him. He threw a fit. We take that as a number. We have to get his hours down. Make him go out. I don't care if he is kicking and screaming. And take him somewhere else besides Brahms for the 1000th time. Me. That's the only place he feels comfortable. Stop making excuses. I was a baker at a brand new donut shop. The bar restaurant next door was under the same ownership, and the owner decided to build an indoor doorway connecting her two establishments. She hired a crew who worked into the night, carving a doorway through brick. This produced a ton of dust. The crew did not properly channel the dust outdoors or appropriately ventilate. Soon the accumulation of dust reached such an enormous volume that it set off the fire alarm in the building. About an hour later, 3 AM hits. Time for me to start making donuts. I walk into 4-inch thick brick dust covering every single surface in the bakery. Bowls, spoons, prep tables, fryer, ovens, everything. It looked like it snowed inside. There was a fog in the air from still settling dust. To make matters worse, the owner had scheduled a television appearance for our donuts that morning. I was to have 24 television-ready donuts fried, cooled, and decorated by 7 AM. In a dust storm, she asked me to make them. She wanted me to make donuts for television in a clearly food-unsafe environment with 100-plus-year-old brick dust floating in the air and covering all work surfaces. She also wanted to open the shops that day while we were cleaning. That means serving food made in that bakery in those conditions. When she insisted that I make the donuts, I said you have got to be out of your freaking mind, turned around, and walked out of the establishment. I never looked back. As someone in the food industry, who takes pride in their work, I believe it is morally wrong to serve any food that is made in an unsafe environment with unsafe ingredients. Period. Lie to customers about a service that's absolutely useless with 100% profit for the company and 0% value to the purchaser. I refused and was fired a month later. Worked at a stem cell lab as a lab technician. My roommate worked there. I needed a job. Boom, I'm in. None of us were certified to handle human tissues. In fact, I don't know what kind of certs you need. As a criminology student, with no background in medicine, I was going to plastic surgery clinics to spin down and isolate stem cells from the fat tissues of patients. This was done on top of a regular exam table in a regular exam room, not a sterile environment or fume hood. My boss would ask us to bring back some of the fat tissue with us so we could grow those cells and use the byproduct, media, in our rejuvenation skincare products. Fricking Fight Club stuff. I was an assistant manager at a plasma donation center in Virginia, the kind that pays the donor $15 or so per donation. After Hurricane Katrina hit, our regional manager came to our center with this huge sign to hang outside on the building. He asked me to help him hang it up. The sign had said something about urgent donations needed to help the victims of Katrina. The thing is, none of the plasma collected at our center would be used to help the victims. The plasma our center collected wasn't even used in the United States, but was sent overseas to Germany to be used in prescription medicine for a German pharmaceutical company. They just used the tragedy to increase the plasma collection. On top of this, we were told to put a donation jar out inside the center to also help Katrina victims. That money was used for a dinner party for my manager and the regional manager. Pisses me off to this day. And an engineer. I consider it unethical when people ask me to do something because it has been backed by experience rather than calculating and making sure everything is correct and optimized. LOL, don't go into manufacturing. You get a lot of part must be spit on by Tim to achieve flatness kinda stuff. Worked in McDonald's and they frequently asked me to take all test salads and apple pies to the back and put new 3-6 hours timestamps on them since they expired. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.